Hey everyone, this is sci-fi and fantasy author Lindsay Buroker here with my narrator, the narrator for the Death Before Dragons series, Agents of the Crown series, and Emperor's Edge series, Vivienne Leheny. Hi Vivienne, I'm going to give you a bit of an intro, but let me let you say hi first.
Hi, Lindsay. Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining me. As I warned you ahead of time, we've got a mix of questions here for you. These are from your listeners and my readers on my Facebook page. And we've got a mix of folks wanting to know. Some of them are about the books and how you
Mhm.
enjoy or hate pronouncing my character names. And then some are like, I think I could read between the lines that some people are wondering like how to get into audiobook narration, and they want to know like how to
Fair
make the big
enough.
money working from home. So we got a few like that. Anything you want to say before we jump right into the questions?
No, other than I'm just very excited to be here, and yeah, let's get right into it.
Awesome. I do feel I should ask you about your booth before, because I was telling her before the show that it looks a bit like a spaceship, which is perfect for a narrator of sci-fi and fantasy. Is this professionally soundproofed so no noises get
Uh,
in?
Not quite. No, no, no. I do. I've been thinking of it lately in Zav terms as sort of my narrating cave, and so I'm trying to make it as cozy, and I keep a little meat supply in the corner. But it's other than that, it's actually a booth that we put together in August when my home booth in the city, New York City, it just became too noisy with COVID changes, like kids in the courtyard 24 hours a day playing outside the building, and the restaurant downstairs and in the next building put the fan vent on the external wall of my studio. So that was just a low level that was constant. There was just like no way around it. So I'm up in Massachusetts at my folks' old shack, which is not very well heated. There's nobody else here, but we kind of built this space over a week, thanks to Home Depot, Lowe's, and a lot of I don't know this stuff, but like two walls with soundproofing, fireproofing stuff between. And then my husband did all of that. And then I did all the exercise matting and soundproofing and things like that. So it's not actually soundproofed. It's not a whisper room. And when there's air traffic, and there is a small airport nearby, I'll hear it coming, and I'll pause in my recording and I'll wait for it to pass. But it's actually really good. It works really well. And frankly, I've been recorded in professional booths that were technically soundproofed in New York City. And if a particular siren goes by or an elevator shaft is nearby, you're having those same issues. You're having vibrations and rumbles. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you made it work. And I guess that's an answer to a question that we didn't even have was like, what do you have to do to your home if you're going to record your own audiobook or try to work for someone else? I know I've heard of people like recording from their closets, just kind of like with blankets all around them to dampen the sound.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite stories, there was a narrator, a professional narrator in the city. And when COVID happened, she had to leave her apartment, and she went to live with her partner in, I think, Yonkers. And they didn't have a space. She ended up sitting in the family's Jeep and draping blankets over her, and they ran power cords out from her laptop and her software, and she recorded in there like 3 books for, I think, about a month and a half. And then she and her partner moved, and she got a professional booth, and she sent in her first files to the production house, and they were like, we kind of liked your other setup better. So that's what it is.
Who knew the Jeep would not be soundproof? I've got one actually, a Jeep Wrangler, and it's just all metal. There's no carpeting or
No,
anything in there.
I was a Wrangler owner for myself, 3 of them, only 2 of which I rolled. So I managed to keep the third one until the bitter end.
Man, there's a story too. You're a wild child, and I didn't even know it.
They're probably, yeah, they're probably better waiting for, interviews 5 or 6 down the road. So maybe not the first one out the gate.
All right. Well, we will get to the point, I guess,
Okay.
or at least the first question. I don't know what kind of points are in here, but Kirsty asked, how did you get started in audiobook narration, and what is your favorite part of being a narrator?
It was sort of a natural offshoot in some ways from, I mean, I've been a professional actor and living in New York City since my late 20s. And because none of us, unless, we suddenly hit it big, are able to fully support ourselves doing stage work or, small films and things, I got an agent, started doing commercial work, and then I got a nice gig with the Today Show, where I was sort of going in and doing the promos for the next morning. So, it was, tomorrow on Today, we'll talk to Nicole Kidman about her new movie and Donald Trump and his, whatever, something. And, those types of shifts that you make in 15 seconds and then they just blurb it during a soap opera for the next day's show. And so for about 7 years, that kind of kept me stationary because I had to literally go into 30 Rock every morning at 10:30 to record the next day's stuff. And so I stopped going on the road and touring and doing regional theater. So, and I missed acting a lot, but it was really good money, and it was probably the best money I'd made at that point. So, definitely golden handcuffs. So, um, then just various changes, and I had always been curious about audiobooks, but it was not a huge industry back in the late 90s. There were people doing it, but my agents definitely weren't submitting for it. They didn't make enough money. But I was really curious, and then at the Screen Actors Guild Foundation, they put in a voiceover studio. They were doing free classes, and there was one for audiobook narration. And I was lucky enough that the two women working there at the time, one is now at HarperCollins, the other was at Blackstone, and she's now with Apple, were coached me. They essentially mentored me, and that was that. That's how I started doing it. And what do I love? What don't I love about it? I just love it. I consider myself so lucky because it kind of blends what I love about acting. Plus, it allows me to work on my own schedule at home. And frankly, I was one of the lucky ones during this last year. Audiobooks didn't particularly take a dive. And the fact that I was already prepared to be recording from home, even though we had to make a change partway through, it's actually my busiest year. So, and it doesn't look like that's going to be changing much, which is great. I'll ride the bus for as long as I can.
No, that's awesome. I've kind of been the same way since I've been a full-time author for many years. I'm like, well, this is going to change my life a lot. Okay, it changed very little. I did my home gym was basically the thing. I stopped going to the
Woo!
gym.
That's great, though.
So for people, because I think I originally found you on ACX
Yep.
Audible through like I had put up a clip of my book and a bunch of people did auditions for a few minutes. And I think I had my beta readers and a few people listen. I was like, I think I like this one. What do you guys think of this Vivienne lady? And so that was the beginning.
It
Um,
was.
do you know, can people still get started that way? Like if they don't have any background, can they try to audition and hope to get started?
Yes, and but ACX has gotten it was the Wild West for a while. There were a lot of scam jobs put up there because people were getting free codes, and there's always somebody who can figure out, this, how to play the system. And there in some ways are I think a lot of indie authors who are a little further along the way on this are these days often contacting narrators directly. I mean, that's how it's been happening for me with ACX. People will reach out because they've heard my narrations on your book or Anna Hackett's or elsewhere. But you can break in that way, and there are other ways to get books up and out there. So the trick is just sort of getting books published, because once you've got one or two up for sale on Audible or Google Play, you can begin reaching out to others and basically positioning yourself as a narrator. So yes, you can definitely still break in via ACX. My sense is it's takes a little longer, but I teach classes at times, and some of my students have had very good luck with auditions in the last 2 years. So, it can go either way.
Yeah, I can see where it would be tough. You might have to audition for a lot of different books before you get picked. Because I know I got a lot. I think I got like 30 or 40 at least. I feel like I cut it off. Of course, I am, Lindsay Buroker. So they were honored to do my books.
Absolutely.
We'll pretend that was true.
No, I actually know someone who auditioned for the book. I found out about it later on, and I was like, "Holy cow," because I think she's wonderful. So I'm very, very glad you settled upon me. Hugely glad you settled upon me.
Well, I think it probably does have, because I'm sure you guys look at the book before you even bother. Like, especially if it's like the royalty split option, you got to be like, hey, is this book selling any copies? Am I actually going to make any money off of this?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because it costs to produce a book. I mean, that's what we're doing these days. We are not just narrators, we produce the book. So we either hire people, and I do, to do aspects of the production, but I'm still responsible for, basic editing and learning all that stuff, buying my own equipment, setting up a studio, um, you know, all of that. And again, with more of the home record these days, the publishing houses, because I work with some of them, they have greater expectations for what you're going to be able to do, that they'll be able to, that you will like get Source Connect, which is $600 out the door to connect your computer directly to the Ethernet, so that they can actually read your files and play with them as you're recording off your computer. So there are some expenditures up front. It doesn't have to be prohibitive though. Um, yeah, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but
Oh, I should point out that was Cindy's question. I kind of hijacked her. Do you have any advice for people looking to get started in book narration? And sounds like yes. Sounds like you kind of answered it a little bit.
yeah, no, I would. There is a great website, and maybe what I can do is I can put it in the notes to the video. It's called the Narrator's Roadmap, and it's run by Karen Comans, who is a narrator, and she has just like collected a wealth of material. Even though I'm working with students, I send students there just to kind of read up and get a full sense of the industry. There's a lot of support, particularly in Facebook groups. I'm a little sometimes on Facebook. I'm not as present as I should be, but the Facebook narrator groups are really active and people are very supportive and helpful. Sometimes it's separating the wheat from the chaff, but I'm guessing everybody has experience with that these days in online forums. You know that you have to kind of get the lay of the land and who the regular commenters are before you can sort of suss out whether or not, you know, you should be taking that particular advice.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely look up the website too and put the note in the description. And I'll put all the questions down there so people can jump around if they are
Okay.
curious about more here. I also was curious, is this sort of is narrating audiobooks now? It sounds like that's your full-time thing, but you also mentioned teaching courses, or is it lessons? Is that how does that work? Can people sign up to like be taught by Vivienne?
I do. I need a bit of a break. Well, actually, I've got 7 books between now and February 20th to do. So I'm pretty much wall to wall between now and then. But I was teaching at the end of October, and then in November and December, I did 2 different classes for Maine Media College. And I've taught in person there, but obviously it's all online now. And I may be doing something in February, and I'll post it on my website, and I'll give you guys that too. But there are plenty of people who are very good, and some people prefer coaching. I'm not comfortable coaching one-on-one. I feel that particularly when people are starting out, this is just a personal opinion, but there's a lot to be learned. But listening to others and also hearing others get feedback and how they make adjustments. We can't always process what we're doing in the moment. Sometimes we can later, but often if we can see somebody else making gains or kind of getting an idea and executing it, it solidifies our own discovery. And the other thing is, and you know this as an author, there's a lot if you're there's a lot that's wonderful about being able to work on your own and on your own schedule and from home. And I am a bit of a loner. I can be quite gregarious, but I'm probably ultimately an introvert. Um, but there is something very isolating potentially about being cut off. And it's important to kind of hear others work and build communities that way. So yeah, so you can definitely, that's a good way to break in to to audiobooks. I think a lot of people have a bit of a misconception that if you have a nice voice, you hear that you have a great voice, you should do, or that you love to read and you like to play with voices. There's some of that that's entailed, but it's much bigger than that. There's a lot of genre differences. You have to know, there are different reads that are required, and you kind of have to begin to learn the tropes. But I would say before doing anything else, just start listening. Listen to a variety of different readers, see what sits with you, what you like. Um, and then read up on Karen's site. That's the second place I would go. And then I would reach out for some classes, or if you do want to do coaching, there are people who do that too. Definitely.
Yeah, I imagine that just the kind of learning the breathing and stuff so that you can not kill yourself by running out of air while you're trying to read a whole
I'm
page.
not I'm not sure I even took a breath while I was talking just now. I don't think I breathe very often. Not probably not healthy, but
All right. Well, it's possible you are an alien yourself, and that's why you're drawn to the sci-fi authors. So the next question is from Melanie. What kind of recording equipment do you use, and does it eliminate background noises such as a dog barking from across the street, or a
nope,
siren, or a vent from the Chinese
nope,
restaurant?
nope, nope, you are spot on. Nope, you can't find anything delicious that does all that for you. You really have to. It doesn't mean you can't record from the closet. That was actually my booth back in New York City is a converted closet, but we were able to, it had depth and it was tucked in a corner of the apartment where there really wasn't, I mean, as much as you can get some degree of isolation in a New York City apartment, this space had it. It did until, as you said, the Chinese fan vent came. Actually, it was a Mexican restaurant, but that's all right. Right outside, thundering away. So no, what basically what you need to start if you're going to be doing professional, the types of books that, because ACX runs things through the blender. It has to be a certain standard. And to achieve that quality, you do need a very good mic. Um, you can get away with a plug-in mic, a USB plug-in mic for a little while, and I did on my initial auditions. But basically, come time to actually record a book that's going to be for sale, you do want to be able to have a mic then you're also going to need an audio interface. So you're going to connect the mic with your cord to the audio interface, and then the audio interface connects to your computer. Then you need to purchase the DAWs, the digital audio workstation software. GarageBand is one, but GarageBand won't cut it ultimately for the type of work that you need to do. There's actually free stuff out there. There's some really good free programs, Audacity, things like that. But you also, it's helpful to, if you're starting out, to take a leap into the deep end of the pool and get software that allows you to do what's called punch and roll, because we have to do pickups. I can probably get on a good run of narration, I can maybe get 3 to 5 minutes uninterrupted. That's rare though. Generally, it's like a minute and a half, 2 minutes in. If I'm just starting in the morning, or if I've had too much coffee, or for whatever reason, it could be like every 10 seconds for a little bit of time that I'm stopping, there's a flub. So what the punch and roll in the software allows me to do is drop my cursor a little further back in the sound wave. It starts, I'm sorry, where I want to do the pickup. It will give me about 3 to 5 seconds I can choose of play in. So I'll hear myself read. I'll know emotionally where I'm going. And hopefully I can come in with that same energy and instinct. So it's not like this weird, isolated drop in pickup that sounds, and I'm sure we've all heard versions of that in various audiobooks, even very good ones. 3 months later, you could be coming back to a pickup and it just doesn't get inserted well. And, the person is talking here and then they're suddenly down back here again. And what just happened, A bad pickup.
See, we do the same thing as authors. You have to kind of go back and read what you were writing the day before so you can get back into the scene. All right, next
Very good.
question is from Jamie. How do you prepare to narrate a book? Do you read the book first to get acquainted with the characters and their quirks? It's like she's talking about my books. Or do you just
Could
jump
be.
in?
No, definitely. I definitely read first, partly because you don't want to like get to the end of a book and then suddenly find that the author, and this has happened, will reveal, in the last chapter, he said to her in his lilting Irish brogue, and all the while you've been giving him California Surfer Dude for, 300 pages. And then you're like, uh-oh. So it helps to know what's going to happen. Plus, you kind of want to get the lay of the land. That said, um, for the first time with Death Before Dragons, partly because of the backup of books coming in, but also partly because I was having fun with the series, I felt like I had the characters in my system. And the last book, or two, no, it was number 6. So that's not False Security, right? False Security's 5. 6 is Storm Forged. Um, I I was in the middle, like rocking and rolling with the characters. I'm in the flow, and suddenly Lindsay introduces this delightful marsupial shapeshifter who's a doctor with an Australian accent. And I literally, like in my head, went, and I thought, oh dear God, we're in trouble now. And I, this poor guy has an utterly, do you pronounce it execrable? He has an utterly execrable, I'm pronouncing it that way,
Oh, that's a great word. Good
Australian.
vocabulary word.
Thank you very much. And I probably mispronounced it. This is why Merriam-Webster is my best friend, or Oxford Dictionary. Listen to how they pronounce it. Go back in and record it. Um, yeah, so I think I've begun to find my way with him a little more. But the mortifying thing is, we have a mutual contact in the author Anna Hackett, who we've both had some, I think, spoken contact with, and she has such a lovely Australian accent. And I have butchered this guy for you, Lindsay, but he's very sweet and I like him very, very much. So hopefully people will be able to give a pass on that. This is not a craft of perfection. It's a lot like stage work, that you're going to have, ebbs and flows, but hopefully if the ride is really working, even the slight missteps sometimes lead to something greater. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do.
Well, I'm not super picky, like I don't cannot pronounce my names. I could never do any of these accents. I'm like, oh wow, she's doing the accents. I didn't even expect that. I just read it. But you are an actress, so you must act.
Well, I mean, in truth, partly because of who these characters are to me, and just they feel so vital and fun. I think I go bigger with them than I would if I were. But that's also a genre thing. I mean, I would not attempt a Gondo voice in sort of the version of the Gone Girl Gone book that I'm doing. With the psychological thriller heroine. You probably don't bring Gondo to the game then, but um, yeah, yeah, I really should apologize in advance for any number of bad accents. I'm not a great mimic, but what I do connect to are, I think you write such, not I think, everybody thinks you write such incredibly distinctive characters that their voices feel so strong to me, pretty much from the get. uh, it's never confusing to me. It never feels, I'm probably going to lose some people here, but Aaron Sorkin is a very, very good writer who always seems to write. My feeling is the characters all talk the same, but your writing is always completely distinct, and the characters are true to themselves. So I'm just along for the ride with a very bad Australian accent.
Well, thank you for the praise. It's always nice. And see, quirky is what makes them distinctive. So that's probably
Mhm.
the right word. I will say that Rue, one of my beta readers, who is from New York, said your Bronx accent for Dimitri was spot on. So
Oh, I love you, Rue. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, Sarah, who is another beta reader, asked, what kind of notes do you make on the manuscript as you read to help with the narration?
I used to do a lot more when I was starting out. I actually use a program, I annotate, and I'll drop the PDF of the script in there. And I used to highlight color code characters. So, like when I was coming into it, I could see and feel them. I found that because of kind of the way that I work, that in some ways that almost makes me a little too self-conscious and I get a little more arch in my reads. So I want to kind of keep the flow and keep it as natural as possible. Um, and again, when I know the characters, when it's a series, when I feel comfortable with the author's voice, anything like I wouldn't put smiley faces like by like, oh, here's a big moment, because the point is discovering it as I go. And even when I've read and I'm continuing to read ahead now, I'm not going to let that marsupial Australian doctor surprise me again. Um, I I can, when I get back into the actual narration of it, to me, all good audiobook narration, be it nonfiction, fiction, is about discovery in every moment. You really are trying to be in the moment, and because the characters are, even if they're telling a story that already happened to them, they're telling it to somebody for the first time, or they're telling it to them for a reason. So it's finding all of that and trying to find it in the third person narration, or the first person narration in Val's case, as well. So, see, now I just kind of went off the rails. What was there a question there that poor Sarah? She
No,
asked
I
if I
think
worked the
it was
script.
about writing notes in the manuscript.
No,
I think you answered it.
only if I'm confused about something and I need to ask, or there's a pronunciation question.
Which you ask me, and then I'm like, I don't know. YouTube says it's pronounced like this, so you could go with that. It's actually
No,
much easier with the like the made up fantasy worlds because there are no established accents. I mean, other than like a dwarven accent, which you can make whatever you want.
right. Prescott Yes.
So Julia asks, who is your favorite character from all the books you've narrated for Lindsay and why?
I don't, I can't. It's not even just a matter of I have different feelings of affection for all of them. Even like the villains. I mean, I remember like in Agents of the Crown, there was a mother-daughter team that were sort of working on Jev and his dad. And I just kind of delighted in them. They were wonderfully, interestingly, quietly, passive aggressively villainy, but and family, but they kind of had to be different. So that was fun. But I would say, Maldonado, and I came to that series partway through, so that's always a tricky thing. But Maldonado lives in me in some weird way, and Axter kind of had a special place in my heart. I don't know why. And I think, God, in this series, I have so many. I have so many favorites. I think. Yeah, I kinda dig Gondo, and I do have a soft spot for Dimitri too, but they really do all speak to me, and I know that's a really impoverished answer.
You're supposed to say it's Zav. I mean, you can't tick off the dragon. He listens to my podcast, you know.
I know, but I also my sense of him is he likes a little pushback, and it's important to make him work for it sometimes, it seems to me. So,
He just assumes that it's your honor to serve him.
yes. Yes, and actually, the notion that he would even be considered in the same company, I mean, of course he is the favorite. He is the exalted one. We're really talking about the rest of the pool of mongrels and
Right. I
yeah.
have to confess he doesn't really listen to the podcast.
What?
Okay, let's move on to the next question from Monica. How much time does it take, preparation, narrating itself, post-production, to make 1 hour of narration? How much narration can you do in one chunk? And you kind of answered that already. And do you sometimes do takes, like in movies, or start over if you're not satisfied with the segment?
Wow. I would say, okay, industry standard is generally used a 6-to-1 ratio. So 6 hours of narration and production per one finished hour. I do not find that to be true. I have only found that to be true when I am working at in-house recording at a publishing house, because you've got an engineer, there's no director, you are literally just going through it. And if it's not particularly spot on, if it's not your best read, as long as you didn't fumble, that's what's going forward. They're not screwing around with time to perfect or massage or get the characters right. On my own, I'm spending probably on one of your books, because I stop and start and I'm directing myself. And if I feel like I want to come back and get a section right, 3-to-1 ratio. However, when it came to the chapter with the marsupial Australian doctor, that 20 minutes, I think, took me 4 hours. So, because I kept going back, I kept listening to YouTube videos of Australians, like, oh man, I am not getting this. Back and forth, back and forth. And I Frankensteined it a little bit that way. So that is not advisable, but it happens sometimes. So the production end of it, then you have to figure, is probably about 3 to 4 hours of, so if I'm 2 to 3, then production is 3 to 6 or 4 to 6 for one finished hour. But there's also pickups, and you can have several rounds of those, 2 rounds generally. So yeah, that's the production time. I probably, because of where my voice sits, because of it's deep, I constrain it, and it doesn't really, the term of art in the industry is a slightly damaged quality. That is my official designation as a voice. So even if I beat it up, it's not terrible in terms of, generally I can come in close to the day before's read. I really have to blow it out to do damage. But my brain begins to turn to mush after about 8 hours. So but if I'm on a good roll, I could be clocking in 3 hours and not even notice the time is gone. So yeah, so that's how. And there was one more question at the end I think I missed about timing, or
Do you start over if you're not satisfied with a segment?
well, like the Australian, yes, sometimes I do. And sometimes if I've got time, I'll go back and revisit the very top of the book, because sometimes when you get to the end of it, you're fully in the groove. And if I can bring a little bit of that energy to the top of the book, if I feel like it wasn't quite there and I've got time to do it, I'll redo like the first, couple of paragraphs, or see how that goes.
I feel like I should have sent you like some Crocodile Dundee movies or something to
I
get you in
feel
the
like you should
mood.
have had too.
Please
I
enjoy
also
Paul
feel,
Hogan,
please enjoy Paul Hogan.
as we
Great.
all do.
Yeah, or Lindsay, you could not write that he's an Australian marsupial doctor.
Well, I knew he's like supposed to be extinct, this marsupial lion that he is, and they're from Australia. So I was like, well, I guess he has to be from Australia. Can't have a marsupial from like Canada. There are rules.
There are rules. Thank you for observing them. No, he's a sweetheart. I like him. I like him.
I should warn you, he's back in book 9.
I
Everybody's
have.
back for the last one. I mean, everybody, I had to bring them all back in.
They have to. They have to. It's like every great musical. I don't know. There was something else I was going for there. Anyway, you can edit this part out. Go on.
I'd have to do work. I'm more of just throw it up there, and the raw and enjoyable. I was telling you beforehand, I'm very new to like recording things for YouTube, so I don't have a lot of editing experience yet.
So basically, you're just going to hang me out to dry. Got it. Got it.
The listeners enjoy the raw behind the scenes,
Sure they do.
unedited. All right, next question's from Tina. What do you do with your voice or body to get the deeper male voices or sounds?
I try not to think too much about sound, only because, I mean, it's happening, it's operational, because I'm aware that it's a guy or I'm going for a certain authority. But if I get into the sound part, I lose sometimes the thrust of what they're saying. So For Zav, you were so very well. You actually did. You don't do this very often, but you gave me the image of him, and I know you spoke about it, and you sent me a little video clip, and I'm like, yeah, can't do that guy. So, but I mean, I'm a terrible mimic, but his energy, I think I got what you were saying about like, that imperiousness, but also like just an absolute confidence about it. There's no, so I'm working a little bit in the same place in my voice in a lower end. So I would say and I tend to do, not always, I mean, after 8 hours, I generally will sit, but I'm often starting out at least a day's recording standing. And so as long as I'm not knocking over stuff like that and making noise that way, I can move. And I will often kind of square off my posture. I'm standing with my legs apart right now as Zav, and I just need to think about who he's talking to. He talks to Zach, he talks to Val one way and he talks to everybody else the other way. And so it's kind of a joy to play with those qualities in him. So it's probably a little bit of there's some physicality, but it's definitely about the psychology of the character as far as I understand it. That kind of helps me find my way into the voice for them.
Right. It's important to do lovably pompous with a, with a deep, I don't know what the word is, but you did it when you stood up,
Sexy
just kind
pompous.
of
Oh,
sexy
yes, so
pompous.
well, actually, I don't think he works for sexy. He just is at those moments. But but you give the guy a name, when he's Lord Zavrid Noquital, and it's right there. It's just how do you not find that with that pronunciation in that name? And also, there's some stereotypical stuff with men, and you can always screw with it and create a sort of unusual male character by going against the rules. But sort of slowing it down, landing down at the end of a phrase, things like that. And there are a lot of hugely successful narrators who don't do anything. They certainly don't do bad accents. Um, they will not change their quality of their voice particularly at all. They might change pacing a little bit, but you will know a character has finished speaking because they'll take a longer pause, and then emotionally they'll be in the next character. So, there are all different ways to come at it. That's the kind of wonderful thing about the industry. Room for all of us.
Yes, and I love your pronunciation of Zab's name much more than mine. I was having to admit in one of these things I recorded, like, I never say this out loud. I'm not sure how to say this.
Yeah, that's pretty clear. I found some examples of like our first exchanges of words, and there is one in there that my brain has happily released me from remembering it. I saw it this morning in the email and I'm like, holy cow. And when I sent it to you and said, Any thoughts?" You said, "Oh, well, that was very cruel of the author to do that." And no, I've got no idea, but I guess we'll have to make it work. By that, I mean, you'll have to make it work. And then I thought, "Oh, I'm gonna like working with this woman. I definitely am gonna dig working with her."
Well, I wonder how your opinion is on it, because I know authors too that kind of micromanage the narrators and like make them re-record stuff like, no, no, you didn't get this right and stuff. Like I always feel like you're more experienced than I am. I'm happy to let you just run with it, unless it's like really something that's firm in my mind.
I think it's, I mean, basically that stuff as much as you can, you try and sort it out before you even begin on a book because just like with pickups, if there are too many pickups, at some point, this is it's being in the flow of it. It's being in the flow of the storytelling. And anytime you're going to make an adjustment to what has already been done, it's not that you can't improve it, but there's a much likelier time that there's going to be something that slightly pulls the listener out of it. They can hear it or they feel, the thrust of it isn't quite as sustained. So, um, and if somebody requires you to try to be or do something that is not easy or natural for you as a narrator, it can interfere with the storytelling too, because you're so conscious of trying to get it right that you lose the thrust of what's happening between the characters. So it's a tenuous balance. And I get that for authors, it's got to be incredibly hard to release characters to a narrator who's like then saying, "Hey, I'm off to do my own interpretation of them. Thank you very much." Um, Yes, but it keeps things interesting. And you have been very, 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 very gracious about that.
All right. Well, appreciate that. And I think too, authors, especially if it's their first series, they tend to be like really precious about things. And later on, you're like, learn to
Understandable.
let it go a little bit. All right. Next one is from Jennifer. We're just a few more here. I love how I said this will take 20 minutes.
I'm talking too long, sorry.
No, no, you're not. I'm sure that people will enjoy this.
They're
Uh,
off to get drinks. They're actually going to the bar without masks at this point. They're like, "I'm done."
no, they're drinking at home. This is
Oh,
this is COVID
oh.
here. You'd get drunk in your office while you watch YouTube videos. All right. So Jennifer says, I love your narration. How do you come up with the
You.
voices for each character? I listened to the Agents of the Crown and I'm currently listening to Death Before Dragons. I especially love how you do Dimitri. Did you
Oh.
work together on each character, on how they should sound, or did you come up with them on your own after reading the book? And we've kind of talked about that, but if you have anything more to say.
No, I think we've hit where I've gone completely awry with some of them and then gotten others, and in the case of The Emperor's Edge, obviously I wanted to try and come in with characterizations that were at least in keeping with the narrator before me, because that's so jarring. I don't love it when a narrator is switched between series. I think it's hard. You know, you develop a sense of loyalty and connection to how those characters happen. But I thought if I could find qualities that I was hearing or that I was identifying in that read. So in that case, that probably of the books that I've done for you was the one that was most shaped by external considerations. But even then, I was pretty clear I could not mimic her style. Our narrative energies are different. So it really was about trying to honor the characters. But again, like I said, you made it easy. I was hooked on the first three books in my own listening and reading. So by the time I picked up at four, you know, I felt like I knew them. So something is happening
I've
there.
got a dog whooping on the side, so hopefully nothing major.
Oh,
So I'll just give you the next question so I can mute myself while you talk. Different Cindy, this one happens to be one of my friends and beta readers who gives me a hard time all the time. She says, how many times did you have to practice saying Lindsay's dragon names?
this one, Death Before Dragons, hasn't been so bad. There was one I remember from Agents of the Crown, where some long story that oh my gosh, I've gone up on our lead elf's name, but he's telling a story, and I'm like, oh my god, this Mount something or other, Ishnakothert, I don't even remember. And then the dragon's name in that one threw me. But these, I think at the point that you kind of just said, Vivienne, whatever you can get your mouth around will work. It gives me freedom to kind of go with it. So I kind of dig having your difficult dragon names. They make me laugh. I will start just laughing in the booth. So
I remember watching a behind the scenes ones for the sitcom Frasier, which is one of my favorites. I own
it's
all the
great.
seasons and watch them again and again. The humor and writing was great, but they were saying that Martin, I don't remember the actor's name, John Malone.
Mulaney.
All right,
Mulaney.
yeah,
No,
and they
no,
were
it doesn't matter. Go Mahoney, John Mahoney.
John was not good at pronouncing names, and so they would give him all these like Wajubuji Dukowski, like these Eastern European names with like 8 syllables, and they just really mess with him. And I may be, I mean, I'm not trying to torment you with the dragon names. It's just I
No,
grew up reading fantasy, and the dragons all had these long, pompous names, and it just seems like a requirement. I can't name Zav could not be Bob.
no,
That
no,
wouldn't fit him.
no, and honestly, that little apostrophe is everything. I saw that and I just got like so excited the first time because, and then to me, I'm like, that means something guttural. I don't know why. I'm like, Zavrid Nokwita. There's got to be something woof there.
Somebody asked me in a comment, what does the apostrophe mean? I'm like, I don't know. You pause there. It's like not two names, not quite first name, last name. It just all, that was the big thing when I was growing up reading fantasy. There were always apostrophes and everything. So I was like, I got to throw one in his name too.
I think it's critical. And it actually, I found it very informative. It helped shape his entire character came off that apostrophe, Lindsay. I'll have you know.
I'm glad it was a helpful apostrophe.
Helpful.
All right. Kelly asks, how do you avoid laughing in the middle of narrating some of the awesome scenes? And that is not what I thought the sentence was going to be, because I know you've done Ruby's books, which is my pen name, Ruby Lionsdrake. And I know you do Anna Hackett's books, and I've read her books. And I thought she was going to be like, how do you avoid laughing during the sex scenes? Which just, I was sure that was where that was going. But awesome scenes is the question.
Awesome scenes. I don't stop laughing. I just do. And then that's when I do a pickup and start recording again. I'll just have a good laugh. I remember there was a point early on, Death Before Dragons, and I had prepped the book in advance, but for some reason it surprised me in the booth 2 weeks later when Zav walks out and there's something about his footwear and socks. And I like literally just saw him so vividly in my mind. And I laughed for like 5 minutes. I just couldn't shake the image. And I thought, get it out of the system, get it out of my system. But it was okay because I think Val was appreciating that moment too. So yeah, I don't avoid laughing at your awesome scenes. I also laugh at your sex scenes. So
Who doesn't? I always wonder when I've written those books and people get the audio books. I'm just imagining always these like soccer moms listening to them in the car with their kids in the back. And like, how does that work for you?
I would hope that not with the kids in the back. I've heard that actually for, shall we say, the steamier stuff, that the largest markets are truck drivers and prison populations. And I have received some interesting fan mail from some of those early books that I did. So yeah, apparently there's quite an audience there. And also the suburban soccer moms. I just think probably not the kids in the car. I hope to God not.
They're back there with their, all the cars now have the DVD players are in the back. I mean,
They're
not even
completely
DVD.
zombied out.
Yeah, you don't even have to have DVDs anymore. You just stream it straight from the gods. I should say I've also got an email for Ruby from truck drivers. So I mean, you're driving all day. You gotta do something
Yeah.
to entertain yourself. So all right, I think that was the last question from the readers. My last one is just what other projects have you done? Because you do narrate other people's books. It's allowed. And
Yes.
what should people check out if they're interested in more Vivienne?
Well, definitely Anna Hackett's series, Sexy, Sexy Times, the Galactic Gladiators and Eon Warriors, and the Cyborgs. There's a Cyborg series. They're feisty and fun. And I've got, there's a smattering of nonfiction that I've done for some of the publishers, a weird range of stuff, crime, self-help, religious expose, or sort of like a dark religious expose. And then I think probably my other wheelhouse that's developed in narration. So it's definitely my two biggest areas are sci-fi, fantasy, and I don't know, I guess you'd call it the thriller with the unreliable narrator or heroine. Is she threatened or is she actually threatening others? So psychological thrillers, psychologically damaged people. And I like to bring that same psychological damage to your books and your characters, Lindsay.
To my dragons.
To your dragons.
They all have quite a few issues, as we found out as the series goes on.
Boy, do they. Oh, they're charmers. They really are.
It's not until the last book. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say spoilers, but I think it comes across in the storyline that Zav has a few mommy issues that he's working through to make mom proud, Mama Dragon.
Yeah, yeah. He's definitely, I love his arc. I love how he has, and I just love that he's unapologetically him, I mean, if he's going to have sex with Val or with Val in front of the goblins, that will be fine because he is ready for that now. And if, he is wearing his yellow clogs, then that is fine because that is what he's doing now. And it's kind of refreshing to have a character who has absolutely no self-reflection. And it's just everything is what it should be because he's doing it. So, yeah.
So he's kind of like a dog. Dogs have like no shame or, as I was telling you before we started recording, I had mine lift her leg and start bathing loudly. I was like, oh, that's going to be great in the background for this. All right. Well, last thing, where can people find you online if they want to find more?
Well, Audible, Google, just if you can, you just plug in my name, you'll find the titles that come up. I have a website too, where I do lists of classes and also books, and Twitter, and I communicate with you on Twitter. You are my buddy on Twitter. Nobody else. I don't talk to anybody else on Twitter, just
Of
you.
course not. Usually at like, no, I want to say like 9 p.m. my time. It's like, that's why I suggested, should we record in the evening? I've never actually seen you active during daylight hours, so
I was this morning. I'm going to throw you off. I'm just going
that's
to do
true.
it.
Well, I figure you work during the day because I'm the same way. I work best earlier in the day, and then evenings are good for screwing around.
Yeah, I will often record till about 8 o'clock at night. I'll sort of start late morning and into the afternoon then, but I just can't sleep at that point. My energy is really high, and so yes, I go on Twitter to read what you have done and said, and what I might be reading in the future. So
I was gonna say, I hope you
it's a
don't go on
balance for me.
Twitter to relax because that's like where all the horrible news is breaking all the time. Although if you follow me, you just get like pictures of
Right.
dragon. I posted a dragon pen today or something.
Don't think I didn't see that. I did. I did. It was lovely,
I'm glad you
charming.
appreciated it. I try to keep things, there's got to be a place where people can just go and not get the real world, you know?
What? We're talking about the real world. This is Zav's real world. It's such a joy for me to narrate. I am so crazy about this series. I think I told you when I read the first book, when Sinister Magic came in, and I'm like, holy cow, we've got orcs, goblins, trolls. I do kind of think of them in one world, but over here we've got vampires and werewolves. Oh, and there's a Sasquatch. Oh, and of course the dragon, I guess, fits in a variety of worlds. And wait, and when the haunted house showed up as a character, I literally fell over laughing, and I'm like, I love this series. You just like took the kitchen sink, threw it in there, and it all works. It's like fully committed. Um, pardon my French, balls to the walls going for it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. I was like, if I was going to bring fantasy to Seattle, you were going to know. I was just going to bring them all.
Okay.
And what's funny is I started out going, well, I'm not going to do vampires. There's so many vampires already in urban fantasy. Nobody needs another vampire. And like, I don't know, chapter 8 was like Zoltan comes in, my vampire alchemist, who has way
Oh,
more YouTube subscribers than I have. He's got his own channel.
he does. Well, he does have tinctures available at the coffee emporium. So, you could think about, yeah, I mean, you've got so much time, Lindsay. I
Of
think you probably
course.
could spread out into that venue.
Well, I think every writer does actually dream of having like a bookstore slash coffee shop slash like Dungeons and Dragons room in the back. So, but maybe not every writer, every fantasy writer.
Dungeons and Dragons, you don't mean something weird, or
No,
you're not
you're
talking like dark elf kinky
just
stuff.
your
You're talking about the
gaming
game.
room.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
I don't know about kinky stuff. I'm too innocent.
Fair enough. Sure you are.
All right. Well, I guess we'll end this 20-minute interview 50 minutes later. And, thank you so much for spending so much time. No, we're not cutting anything. These were gems. This was beautiful. I really appreciate you coming on and helping me. My first interview on the channel, and it says we're still recording, so nothing has exploded yet. Hopefully, that's a good sign.
I loved it, and you've got the greatest fans. They have been very generous to me too, and I'm so grateful. But honestly, every time I come into the booth with the Lindsay Buroker book, I'm like over the moon. So keep it up, lady. Chop, 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 chop.
All right.
Get
Well,
back to
thank
writing
you.
tonight.
I
All
will.
right.
You've got like 4 more things you're going to record for me. So no, it's not like you have to stop anytime soon. All right. Well, I'm going to stop this now. And thanks for listening, everyone. This has been awesome.